Hello everyone, how are you today? My name is Mayor and I'm here to talk to you about the truth about Israel and the Palestine conflict. Now, for starters, I'm going to ask everyone a question. Who owns the land? Who does it belong to? Let me begin by saying that in 2007, August 28th, the Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Olmert, and the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas were talking about the greatest issue on Tuesday. They were discussing the final borders of Israel and Palestine, and Jerusalem as their capital, and as the Palestinian capital. Those core issues have to be discussed in a way that to finding a diplomatic solution of two states for two people. Now, this conflict seems to be on the news all the time. TV, radios, newspaper, etc. You cannot, and I repeat, you cannot go onto the internet and not find something about what is going on in Israel in quest for the so-called Palestinian state. Now, here is the real question. Whether you agree with me or not, these are the facts. First of all, should there be a Palestinian state for the Palestinian people, side by side with Israel? Now, for me, the answer is no. Now, here's another question. Did the Jews take the land from the Palestinians? No, they did not. It's pretty simple. They did not take it from them. God gave it to the Jews. Period. Genesis 13, verses 14 to 17 says, it declares that this, it's a promise by God, and it was given to Abraham. And I quote, lift up your eyes from where you are, and look north, south, east, and west, and all the land which you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever. I will make them like the dust of earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go, walk through the land, the length of the land, and breathe of the land, for I'm giving it to you. Now, the Arabs say that, you see, that's it. It belongs to us too. It's our land too, because we came from the descendants of we are the descendants of Abraham, vis-a-vis Ishmael. Now, wait a minute. One sec. The Arabs will use that verse to say, well, if we are the descendants of Abraham and God promised the land to Abraham, we should have a land there too. I'm sorry, but that's not how it works. Two things, people, two things. First, God didn't recognize Ishmael as Abraham's son. Ishmael at the time was 13 years of age, and he was a work of the flesh. It was his and Sarah's way of trying to help God in fulfilling his promise to them, and give them a son from which the promised son would come. God was testing Abraham. When God was testing Abraham, he was trying to see if he would sacrifice Isaac. Only if Ishmael was recognized. Well, here's the problem. Ishmael was not a Palestinian. Palestinian was a transliteration from Philistine. He was not a Palestinian nor Philistine. Goliath was Philistine. Goliath was Philistine. Hagar, who was from the Negev and was the Egyptian maidservant, he was Philistine. Ishmael, long story short, was an Egyptian. Period. What I told you, what if I told you that the Egyptians were not even Arabs? First of all, people, the Arabs are in fact a mixture of 1. Edomites, 2. Hittites, 3. And Moabites. Moab, or the modern day Jordan also. All of these people are what we call today the Arab people. Now, Palestinian. The Palestinian people, which everyone calls nowadays Palestinian, is a lie. It is not true. In fact, if anything, if you were a Palestinian in the turn of the last century, the Jews were really the Palestinians. The Jews were really the Palestinians. If someone was born in Jordan, they would be Jordanian. But today, in reality, may come from Moabite, Edomite, etc. This is why I have a problem with the so-called Palestinian state living side by side with Israel, in peace and security. Well, okay, if it is true then, why do they still call it Palestine? Why should the Palestinians have a Palestinian state? It goes way back, it goes about 2,000 years ago, people. I'm not going to explain the whole thing because it's a very, very large topic, but I'm not a big reader. But for those who are, I recommend a great book that I personally read, started reading, and it's a very great book by an author known as Ramon Bennett, entitled Philistine, the Great Deception. Now, if you want to know what this book is about, it's an accurate account of what happened. I would very much like to read a quote from this book. In 13 AD, the Romans renamed Jerusalem as Aelia Capitolina, after the emperor Aelius Adrenius and the god Jupiter Capitolinus. The Romans kept the name Aelia Capitolina as the name for Jerusalem. They renamed the Promised Land Syria Palestina, and the renaming of the land was an overt effort to eradicate the Jewish connection. To eradicate the Jewish connection. Do you know what that means? After the Muslim conquest in the 7th century AD, the name Aelia Capitolina gradually faded from the use, and in due process of time, Palestina, which was the Latin name for Philistia, the land of the ancient Philistines, was anglicized into Palestine. That is why when and where the people got the notion, it's a fabrication that the land belongs to Palestinians. And I would just like to conclude. Do you know who Yasser Arafat is? The so-called father of the Palestinians. Everyone, he is not Palestinian. He is Egyptian. He is Egyptian. The so-called father of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, he was Egyptian. He wasn't even Palestinian. This is a lie, the mother of all lies. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much. I hope you all learned something today. Thank you very much. Goodbye.